Good morning, everyone. Let us begin with the first practice, heart coherence, building practice called heart focused breathing. So let us do that first. Let us place our awareness in the area of our heart. Take slow, deep breaths and visualize these flowing in and out of our hearts. Just taking the breaths slow and gentle, drawing them in and feeling appreciation for everything that you have in our lives. Breathing slower, deeper, and gentler than you normally would. And draw those breaths in, nice and easy. Just feel every cell in your body. Breathe in this loving, gentle energy that you're drawing into your heart and exhaling from your heart. This is a very simple technique that we can use, and the power is in its simplicity. When you wake up in the morning, take the slow, deep breaths, just like this, and just allow these breaths to flow in and out of your heart. Excellent. Thank you for that wonderful practice. And now we're going to talk about the I didn't know that moment. And of course, we didn't know that moment is all about the solar activities that we talked about. There has been, in 2 weeks ago, we had a major sunspot activity, and I wanted to share with you how that relates to your heart coherence building practice. The solar activity, as you know, the sun is a huge ball of fire, and a few people, or at least a lot of people, know that this huge ball of fire has a magnetic field property. And if anybody's lived in the northern hemisphere, they would have noticed the northern lights. And what the northern lights are just the dances, the coupling between the two magnetic fields, and that is the one that comes from the sun and the one that is generated by Earth, Gaia. And so when the two magnetic fields kind of come together, you see a light show in the sky. It's called the Northern Lights, and that's essentially the Earth's magnetic field interacting with the sun's magnetic field. Now, what happens, the sun always has a magnetic field, but what happens on special occasions is that when the sun has sunspots, which means there are colder areas in the sun. For example, the sun may be averaging 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit heat. There are spots on the sun that are about 3,000 Fahrenheit heat. And so when they have this kind of an instability points in the sun where the majority of it is really hot and the other one is not as hot, you've got this dynamic happening between the hot and cold areas, and that dynamic causes a fluctuation in the magnetic field of bigger proportions than it would. It's almost like shaking a soda bottle up. When you shake a soda bottle up and you release the cap, you have all this gushing out from there. And that's exactly what happens when there is sunspots, is that you have all the shaking up and the solar flares, and that causes magnetic fluctuations, and that dances with the magnetic fluctuations of the earth. And so that's why you see the lights. The lights are just an evidence or some sort of a consequence of these things happening. Now, we've talked about this before. We've talked about our bodies having magnetic fields as well. Because as you draw these deep breaths in and out of your heart, every time it beats, generates a magnetic field. And you have a magnetic field. You're surrounded in a bubble of a 3-foot magnetic field, if not more. Scientists have measured it to 8 feet. And in that magnetic field is the signature of your emotions or your feelings. And scientists have also measured that. So you can actually take a frequency spectrum of your magnetic field bubble, your personal magnetic field bubble. If you take a frequency spectrum, you can see if it's a chaotic frequency, which means you're frustrated or angry, or if it is harmonious frequency, very ordered pair of frequencies, which means that you are actually feeling appreciative and happy. So just like the magnetic field of the sun, when it's under disturbance, interacts with Earth and you see these northern lights, those magnetic fields also interact with our personal magnetic fields. So as we are kind of surrounded in this bubble of ours, and we have this magnetic field interacting with us, especially when there's sunspots, and as I mentioned to you, the magnetic fields that we have actually broadcast emotions. Those emotions can be amplified. So if we're feeling frustrated, the frustration will be amplified because of that interaction. If we are feeling appreciative and compassionate, that compassionate will be amplified. So the idea is, what are you feeling every time? And you don't really have to worry about the astronomy charts or the astronomy announcement saying, oh, there's a solar sunspot coming. If you're practicing your coherence building technique like we're doing now, every day for 15 minutes a day, you will not, these effects will be dampened for you. They will not affect you at all. Or they will, but not in the adverse way. All right? So just wanted to point out to you that today that we want to, we've had a major fluctuation in the solar activity 2 weeks ago. And we will continue to have these. We will continue to have these. These are natural occurring things that have happened all the time. As a matter of fact, there's a Russian scientist, I believe he's a Russian scientist, who actually came up and charted the solar spot activity with human-led destruction or human-led achievements. He says that when he charted them, and we have a huge solar cycle or a sunspot cycle happening every 11 years, and when that happens, human-led innovation goes up through the roof. He's actually charted the innovation, and human-led destruction also goes up. So depending on the amplification of whatever energies you have, it amplifies it to a greater depth. All right? Wonderful. Thank you. All right, that was the I didn't know that moment. I see some comments coming through. It takes 72 hours for a sunspot to hit Gaia field and to affect our emotions. If that's what you read on the internet, my understanding is that it takes about 8 minutes. So it takes 8 minutes for the sun's light to hit us. But there's a corresponding solar wind that follows that. And I think that takes 2 days. And I think you said 72 hours. I read somewhere it takes 2 days. But 2 to 3 days when the solar winds actually caused by that hit us. So when there's a high sunspot activity, the actual activity itself and the magnetic field fluctuations do not affect us as much and in some cases benefit us. But about 2 to 3 days later, the solar wind comes in, and that's the solar wind that really causes that little shake up in our bodies. It's almost like shaking up the pop bottle. So thank you very much. Oh, from this group. You learned it from this group. Maybe I said that and I forgot I said that. Thank you, Lou and Will. Appreciate that. All right, wonderful. So let us now begin the quick coherence technique. And like I said, this is a shield for you. This is a way for you to build that energy bubble around you that dampens the effect of any adverse effects. It'll only allow the good in, but it won't allow the bad in. Let's put it that way. So let us place our awareness in the area of our heart. Take slow, deep breaths. And visualize these flowing in and out of our hearts or chest area. Breathing a little slower and deeper than normal. Just draw those gentle breaths in. Know that you're building a nice little bubble of energy that others can share, but it won't deplete yours. And now begin to experience a regenerative feeling such as love, appreciation, compassion, peace. And just draw that into your heart. Wonderful. Slow, gentle breaths. Let's put a gentle smile on your face. And just draw in these amazing feelings that you have. Know that these emotions are depositing themselves into your bubble. And not only that, but the earth has a magnetic field as well, and it's depositing itself in the earth's magnetic field. And the earth is connected with Gaia, of course, it is Gaia. And its magnetic field is now broadcasting everywhere. So you are actually, in effect, shifting the consciousness of Gaia and humanity just by sharing your compassion, appreciation, and those are frequencies that can be felt across the globe. And you're generating it very naturally. You were born with the tools. You are meant to shine from within. And you are now finding your way to do that. Beautiful. Excellent. And that has been the 15-minute Monday morning espresso shot. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I'm just going to go up the chats here and see if I missed any comments. So hugs right back to you, Lou and Will. Good morning, Gloria. Thank you for joining us. Natalie, loving hello from Germany. Good afternoon to you on our good morning. Deborah, glad you could make it. Amy, top of the morning to you as well. And I think we're caught up. And so if you have to leave, by all means, exit, no problem. If you have any questions, type them into the chat area. Happy to answer them. So are there any questions about today or anything that we've discussed in the past or anything that has come up for the past week? You're welcome, Lane. Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. Nancy, can you explain more about sun energy and how it affects us? Sandy, thank you. Thank you, Sandy, for joining us. Well, the sun energy is interesting. It's not, the magnetic field is just one aspect of the sun energy. The sun energy, of course, causes photosynthesis in the plants, and it is life-giving. They say that if the sun was an inch further away from the earth, we would all freeze to death, and if it was an inch closer to the earth, we'd all just burn to death. So, it's just in that perfect position, in alignment with Earth and the rest. It also allows other planets provides it a gravitational field for the other planets to rotate and around itself. And it's basically a life-giving source in the galaxy here, and in our solar system especially, of course. So the sun energy itself is there to sustain life. The magnetic fields, it's one property of the sun energy, and it's one of many properties. But the magnetic fields is what we discussed today. Is magnetic fields? If you think about it, the magnetic field of our body carries emotions and feelings. Well, there's an equivalent in the sun, that when it ejects magnetic fields, or when it actually has fluctuations in magnetic fields, it's a fluctuation in frequency, and it's a fluctuation in not necessarily what the sun is feeling, because the sun doesn't feel like humans feel, but it's an informational transference. So when the sun sends its magnetic field information, it interacts with the Earth's magnetic field information, and it interacts with our magnetic field information. There are some New Agers who believe that the sun is sending us information to prepare ourselves for humanity's growth and consciousness. The sun and the earth are working together for that. There's scientific evidence that correlates to that. There's no causality effect, but there's a correlation. For example, we live in what the scientists call a cavity. The Earth itself and the space between it and the atmosphere, there's an open cavity there. It's like a waveguide. And so when there's lightning around the Earth, and lightning happens at random intervals, and there's some resonance going on, natural resonance going on in sound around the Earth, it travels up to the ionosphere in the sky and bounces right back to us and goes back and forth. And just like a waveguide, what it does is it creates certain frequencies around the Earth that we feel. And those frequencies, if you measure them, they're called the Schumann resonance frequencies. Those frequencies are actually lined up in the same frequency range as our brain waves. And so they actually help sustain us in the frequency area. Now, all of these are connected. So if you ask me about the sun, you cannot speak about the sun separately from the energy of the cosmic rays in the universe, and the energy of Gaia, and the Schumann resonances that go on. So there's a lot of evidence that shows that there are frequencies that we are immersed in and bathed in all the time, and we feel these resonances, and they do affect us. They do affect us in a positive way or a negative way. It all depends on our own heart coherence. If we are sitting in our place of compassion, love, and joy, it helps us along. If we're not, it honors that because it is a choice. For you to feel sad is a choice, because if you can consciously note that you are feeling sad, then you can consciously move away from that sad feeling. And it's a practice to get there, but once you get there, it's second nature to you. You'll never feel sad. You'll feel sad, but it won't be for such a long time. You won't kind of marinate yourself in that. So that is essentially a long-winded answer to your question about the sun. I hope I tackled that well for you. All right. Who else is writing here? Sorry, I'm just going to go down the list here. Yeah, Nancy, you asked about it. Sandy, you're welcome. Gloria, feeling great. Awesome. Leslie, thank you. Shamir, beautiful hearts. Thank you. Good. Lou and Will know that to be true about Gaia, I'm sure. Thank you, Nancy. Glad I answered that question. I don't see any more questions popping in, so I'm going to bid you goodbye and have a wonderful, wonderful week until we see you next week. All right? You take care, and we'll talk to you next week.